an ambitious target to restore 350 million hectares by 2030, under which Africa alone, through FR 100, will contribute to the restoration of 100 million hectares. Since the inauguration of Bonn Challenge in 2011 and FR in 2014, a significant number of countries have already made commitments and pledges. Africa has so far committed itself to more than 91.6 hectares. And aside from the pledges, notable restoration achievements have been registered around the world. However, a lot is still to be done, considering more than 2 billion hectares of worldwide devastated and degraded landscape that are in need of restoration. This conference is therefore a unique opportunity for all of us to reflect on how to surpass just ambitious commitment and move to accelerated implementation on the ground to address what remains as a persistent challenge. Allow me to highlight a few points that need attention. First, we need country-driven, domesticated strategies. This requires mainstreaming landscape restoration approaches within our development plans for the next decades. It will also require behavior change in our investments. In 2011, Rwanda was the first African country to announce ambitious commitment for a border-to-border restoration of 2 million hectares of degraded forest and agricultural land. Following these pledges, a country-wide restoration opportunity assessment was conducted. I am happy to tell you that the country is on track to achieve this target and has aligned its development policies and strategy to accelerate the restoration agenda. As of now, more than 690,000 of hectares are already restored, which constitute 35% of our commitment. We have devised homegrown solutions to achieve our green growth, and everyone counts in these efforts. For example, Umuganda Community Works is one of the initiatives held at least once a month dedicated to afforestation, soil erosion control, and cleaning our neighborhood, among others. We have also sector-oriented efforts that includes implementing the agriculture land consolidation, adoption of climate-smart agriculture, and strengthening our land use planning and the administration system, among others. Here I can gladly mention that Rwanda has undergone major land tenure reforms, and as of now, 11.4 million land titles are registered, and 7.2 million of them have been corrected by owners. 24% of the parcels are owned by women, 14% by men, and 58% are jointly owned. Second, we need country-led financing solutions. There is need for strong country-led resource mobilization strategy to support landscape restoration. This implies increasing domestic financing and position our country to tap into international climate finances opportunities. Rwanda has tripled its domestic financing for the restoration in the last 6 years, and further decentralized forest governance and public finance management to strengthen service delivery at local level. Furthermore, Rwanda established a distinctive National Climate and Environment Fund, FONERWA, that mobilizes resources for landscape restoration nationwide and reaffirm our commitment to combating climate change. Third, we need to share and learn from each other. While restoring is country-specific, we have best practice across Africa and globally. This calls for strengthening peer learning approaches and build a continental move for restoration of our degraded lands. On that, I invite you to visit Rwanda. Thank you. We need to engage private sector actors. Landscape restoration requires a shift from business as usual. Investment led by the private sector to maximize economic benefits that create off-farm jobs and improve livelihood and ensure sustainable exploitation of forestry. In Rwanda, we have set our target to increase the percentage of public forestry allocated to private operators from 5% to 80% by 2024. Fifth, we need to track progress of our commitment. There is a need to strengthen our monitoring and evaluation to track the progress in regard to our commitment in landscape restoration. Rwanda has been revamping its forest monitoring system and has recently applied Bond Challenge Barometer to help track the progress of our effort to achieve this commitment. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my firm conviction that together we can rise above existing challenges and achieve our ambition to secure the future of our forestry and land, transform communities' livelihoods, and improve living standards of our population. However, we can't afford to lose any more time. Now it is the right time to act. As I'm concluding my remark, I would like to extend my appreciation to organizers, technical team, delegation and sponsors of the 2018 Global Landscape Forum conference, and to all of those who ensured we gather here to discuss development in landscape restoration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that really exciting intervention. I think everybody's going to visit Rwanda very soon. For those who haven't, it's a beautiful country. I would like at this juncture to invite Stefan Schmitz, who's the Deputy Director General and Commissioner of the One World No Hunger Initiative in the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and which is referred to as BMZ. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Africa's diverse landscapes are rich and provide for the continent's food, energy, health, and secure livelihood needs. At the same time, Africa is confronted with tremendous population growth, rapid urbanization, worrying migration dynamics, and climate change, to name just a few of the pressing challenges to development. We all know and see their destructive power on entire landscapes. It was Wangari Maathai from Kenya who pointed out, when resources are degraded, we start to competing for them. Fights over natural resources undoubtedly can become another stumbling block for Africa's development. The UNCCD Global Land Outlook informs us that in Africa, almost 25% of cropland shows signs of decreasing productivity. The same applies to African rangelands and grasslands. The expansion of declining productivity of landscapes in Africa is above global averages, with food insecurity and poverty still being a huge challenge today. Tackling it in the near future will be a mammoth task. Bear in mind the projection of 2.5 billion people populating the continent in 2050, a doubling of today's population. The fight against degradation is not about ecological implications alone. FAO estimates the economic impact of land degradation at more than 40 billion US dollar annually. So there really is a price tag to the natural resource base. The IPBES regional assessment for Eastern Africa estimates the economic value of erosion projection at $11,000 per square kilometers per year, carbon sequestration in vegetated landscapes at $12,000 per square kilometer per year, and food production on sustainable managed soils at $16,000 per square kilometer per year. Natural resources are needed for Africa's economic future. The conference's motto, Forest and Landscape Restoration, Prospects and Opportunities, encourages us to look ahead, share, learn, and discuss how to stop and reverse deforestation and land degradation in Africa. Otherwise, we will not achieve the goals of the Global Agenda 2030, the goals regarding people and planet. It is high time to strengthen our joint efforts, bundle our knowledge and expertise from the many landscape initiatives and programs like Terra Africa or the Great Green Wall of the Sahel initiative, from global, regional, national to local levels. Many of them are represented in this room here today. Let me particularly mention the Africa Forest Restoration 100 initiative, the AFR 100 initiative, which has just concluded its annual partnership meeting here in Nairobi. Many AFR stakeholders are with us at the Global Landscapes Forum today and tomorrow. 26 African countries have come forward and committed to bring more than 91 million hectares under restoration until 2030. More countries are about to join in so that we are very close to the target of 1 million hectares. All these initiatives now must join forces. Only then they will form a critical mass to become a political power. Let me one thing make very clear, ladies and gentlemen. The issues we are discussing here in Nairobi are by no means technical issues. We have the technical knowledge on how to manage natural resources, how to restore landscapes. What is missing is stronger political commitment and will. All over the world, not just in Africa. There are encouraging examples of commitment and will, but it is not yet mainstreamed. The rural world has been neglected too long, far too long. There has always been a bias in the political attention towards the urban world. That is no longer acceptable. The future of mankind depends on the rural world, on its soils, fresh water, forests, biodiversity. What is needed now is strong rural governance, good rural governance. What do I mean by that? I have 4 key building blocks in mind. First, decentralization, top-down, from capitals to provinces, counties, districts, local communities. Decentralization of political power, decision-making, responsibilities, financial resources, and administrative capacities. Second, at the same time, people need to be empowered bottom-up, starting at local levels. Participatory approaches need to be in place to enable people to articulate their need, fight for their rights, and assume responsibility for their lives. Third, territorial policies need to be in place with regional planning approaches and jurisdictional approaches, policies and instruments that allow for a legally binding designation of protected areas, for example, or areas for defined land uses. And fourth, governance of tenure of land, fisheries, forests, and other productive resources, in particular water. Good rural governance is a prerequisite for sustainable rural development. It is a necessary, but not a sufficient condition for this development. Once good rural governance is in place, the real hard work needs to be done. People will be able to use natural resources in a sustainable manner. They will be able to live in harmony with nature if and only if they do not live in extreme poverty. People need productive employment and income. People will cut trees, degrade land, and exploit resources as long as they do not have the choice and no chance to change their behavior. That calls for an agriculture and food system that is able to feed the world, that is productive and sustainable. Landscape restoration has a price tag. Landscape restoration requires good rural governance, and landscape restoration is directly linked to the agriculture and food system. The German government is proud to be able to support the Global Landscape Forum that provides us all with a powerful platform that can help to enhance the role of the world landscapes in building our future. Here we discuss without sectorial, institutional, and disciplinary boundaries. Let us use this great chance to strengthen partnerships around the versatile and holistic concept of landscapes to also advance greater policy coherence for sustainable and inclusive development. Coming back to the great Rangri Maathai, who made it clear that working on our landscapes goes beyond mere ecology and economy. She said, one way to promote peace is to promote sustainable development, management, and equitable distribution of resources. Quoting this and giving reference to this great African lady, I'm looking forward to enlightening insights and experiences from the African landscapes community and wish us fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I'd like at this juncture to invite Ina Rutenberg, who's the country manager for the World Bank, based in Zambia. Please.
Oh, where can I put my notes? Can I flip it down?
Yes.
Like that? Okay. Thank you. I'm a bit smaller. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen of the community of global landscapes, good afternoon. So the World Bank is a founding partner of this Global Landscapes Forum, and really proud to be representing the World Bank here, and very delighted that this forum is in Africa, and particularly here in Kenya. And I'm the third one to reference Wangari Maathai's legacy, and I do it as well, the contribution she has done to restoring landscapes to transform Africa's livelihoods. Now I'm going to talk similarly and very consistently with what my three previous speakers already covered. I hope to bring a bit of a different angle. So I will talk about 3 points covering the linkage of resilient landscape to poverty reduction, to climate change, and to address the funding side as well. And I will introduce 2 new World Bank publications in this context. One is the Changing Wealth of Nations 2018, and the Groundswell, Preparing for Internal Climate Migration. So my first point is about poverty reduction and sustainable natural resource management. The contribution and the importance of it to the World Bank twin goals are eradicating poverty and boosting shared prosperity, and landscape management plays a key role here. It was stated already at the Ministerial Forum on the Environment of the African Union in Niamey last March. Resilient landscapes form a core natural capital that contributes to multiple development gains. And I think this community knows this very well. What are the gains? Food security, rural jobs, alternative livelihoods, and growth in rapidly transforming economies. But it brings more than that. It brings peace, security, and stability. And there's an example we have in Burundi, where restoring coffee landscapes contributed to preventing and reducing natural resource-related conflicts. The World Bank recently published the Changing Wealth of Nations 2018 report. And here we make the case. One of the most important components of a country's wealth is indeed natural capital. Particularly true actually for low-income countries, where it accounts for nearly half of the wealth. But then the worrisome scenario is that half the wealth is very threatened, because 65% of Africa's land is affected by degradation. And nearly 3 million hectares of forest are lost each year in Africa. Now it's a global phenomenon, the loss of forest. Actually, I just looked at World Development Indicators, and globally I learned we lost 1.3 million square kilometers of forest since 1990. That's an area larger than South Africa. So it's a big time. My second point is about resilient landscapes that are critical to addressing climate change challenges. And yes, my previous speaker, Stefan Schmitz, talked about the price tag. The price tag is huge. 3% of Africa's GDP is lost annually from soil and nutrient depletion. And climate change is projected to affect future rainfall patterns and intensity. And we know there's consequences on small farmer communities will be very, very hard. So this new report, Groundswell, Preparing for Internal Climate Migration. The report predicts that the highest numbers of climate migrants will be in sub-Saharan Africa. Not only sub-Saharan Africa, but the largest, with an amount of about 86 million migrants. We know that drivers to push individuals to migrate can be economic, social, political, but increasingly environmental. That is the message of this report. And land degradation emerged as a key driver of migration and conflicts. The other aspect is that internal migration will be by far the larger phenomenon. So internal within countries, so rural-urban migration, rather than cross-border migration. The World Bank is currently supporting Uganda and Kenya, for example, to develop programs to better accommodate the influx of this migration flows. And I think this forum shall discuss how best to do this. My third point is about addressing land degradation at landscape scale is a business of both the public and the private sectors. My previous speakers have alluded to that as well. We do know governments continue to have the key role in policy planning and resource mobilization, and government's role is critical in promoting collaboration across the sectors and across the actors. Now we're looking at resources. It's staggering what is needed and estimated to solve the challenges. About 40 to 130 million US dollars per year per country will be needed. This is huge. And it requires, obviously, innovative financing from a range of sources. Now, the World Bank is committed to promote, and we have been doing that, but we have a new mechanism which we call the Maximizing Finance of Development approach. What it really is doing is using the instruments across the range of the World Bank Group. So it's a public site, what we call IDA and IBRD. And then we have IFC, the private sector arm, and we have MIGA, the guarantee agencies. So we want to work much more tightly together in bringing, to leverage resources for this aim, and particularly to de-risk markets. Okay, that I noticed now. I have some examples I wanted to bring into my aspect of what was it here? Sorry, of the aspect of the changing wealth of nations. The World Bank has been working in Ethiopia and Zambia, and in Ethiopia, the World Bank supported legal landholding certificates and extension support to landless use. Very nice examples, we felt. To exchange restoring degraded communal lands. And it had key results. First, it increased youth employment and empowered youth, and it helped diversify balancing competing land uses and boost climate resilience. So over 740 youth groups with more than 15,000 members benefited. Another further 100,000 landless youth could be reached with sufficient financing. In Zambia, I'm the World Bank country manager in Zambia, we are collaborating on a programmatic approach to tackle forest and landscape restoration, an adaptive, integrated landscape approach. The critical element here that I would like to highlight is a local ownership of that pilot program we have in the Eastern Province. And local ownership translates there that involving and working through local governance, and that is the local chiefs. And that has brought success. There is this pilot program, Komako. It's a community markets for conservation landscape management project. It was a pilot, but it already delivered. For 18,000 smallholder farmers, they received results-based RED Plus and climate-smart agriculture payments from the World Bank's Biocarbon Fund and the carbon emission reductions. And the project generated more than $800,000 in payments to these communities. This is significant. So interestingly is that we, based on this pilot, we have a new project, the Integrated Forest Landscape Project, and we want to scale this up big time. So we want to reach out to 250,000 small farmers with expected carbon payment of about $30 million. That's a lot of money for rural communities. So we want to really grow this engagement also further in the northern provinces of Zambia under a new project on landscape resilience. I didn't want to miss to cite those examples. So finally, in conclusion, collaborative platforms like this are critical. Leadership roles are critical. The African Union Commission, in our view, has a leadership role. We do believe we have to build on experiences and work. I think that's an obvious, and here the Terra Africa partnership is a very good example. We also need to support countries in meeting the targets set under the Africa Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative and the UNCCD's Land Degradation Neutrality Framework. So really, I hope that this Global Landscape Forum will ignite new ideas, create the kind of partnerships and investment that work for people and for the planet. Looking around this room, I see a very dedicated and committed community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much for that intervention. Lastly, of course, but not the least, I would like to invite Mohammed Elmi, Your Excellency, who is our host and the Chief Administrative Secretary from the Ministry of Environment and Forest, please.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here with you. After the last 2 days that we also had the AF 100 to talk about restoration and the particular focus on forest and landscape restoration in Africa. I think they say, I saw somewhere, I think it's not original, that an idea that time has come is very hard to stop. And this conference time, I think, is going to be the place where the fire will be lit and it will move forward. I want to thank the organizers, the coordinating partners, C4, UN Environment, and World Bank for choosing Nairobi. I think it is the right place. The moderator mentioned that as you come out of the airport, there is a national park where the wildlife move freely. And next to us is the famous Karura Forest. And for choosing Kenya, because also Kenya is home to UN Environment, and also Wangari Maathai comes from here. And I would like to invite all the people who have come for the first time to Nairobi to visit those two places, or at least one of them. In Kenya, I think a lot of experience have been shared. I just want to say that we have a long history of restoration, particularly in the 80s and early 90s, with a president who went and built gabions of the time, Wangari Maathai, who championed and made sure that we don't destroy our ecosystem. But somehow, we thought democracy is very important, and for a period, we lost it. And with the population pressure, a lot of our land became more degraded. However, there are new commitments. First of them, our new constitution that was 2010, that prescribes that not only the environment that we should live in, that the Kenyans are entitled to, but also says we must have 10% forest cover by the year 2030. His Excellency, the President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, again decreed, look, we can't wait for 2030, let's do it by 2022. So a tough job for us at the ministry and the rest of the country. With the support of many partners and multi-sector, we have done the mapping. After having committed to 5.1 million hectares to the AFR 100 initiative. And therefore, not only the mapping has been done, the tools for monitoring it has been put in place. And currently, we are at the place where we are saying we mobilize and implement. We have also committed to almost all, probably led in a number of them, the international commitments to environment. Laws and policies are largely in place. We see restoration of forests and landscapes as the mechanism to achieve the President's Big Four. His last term, it was infrastructure, security being put in place. This time, we have something called Big Four in Kenya, and the basis, the base of that will be forest and landscape restoration. The Big Four are food and nutrition security, health, housing, and manufacturing for jobs. I come to the conference today. I think somebody said it earlier in one of the earlier sessions. Actually, we know the problems. And I think one of the speakers before me said, we know the technology and the different solutions to different parts of of restoring landscapes. For me, this is the conference, and using the word restoring landscapes moves people away from only forests to all areas of land, and therefore allows more people to participate. And therefore, my hope from this two-day conference is not only for people from different parts of Africa to share those experiences and technologies and how to do it, but actually, even more, how to organize for it. How do we make all the populations of the world to actually wake up and make this as the thing? Because the earth has to survive. How do we share? I am hoping that, again, we'll share how to finance innovative. We heard from the Minister of Rwanda just telling us how they were able to raise and double or triple the local financing. How can we raise from private sector would be the other things I hope will be shared here. How do we get the best strategies? How do we mobilize communities? How do we make sure communities in with a diverse cultural backgrounds and environment use, how can we make sure that happens? If that happens in the next 2 days, then I'm sure the time that we have spent in these 2 days will be useful. There is a proposal from El Salvador of actually saying, can we have a decade of land restoration or ecosystems restoration? Personally, I think it's a very good idea. It will galvanize us, but I think we need more than that. And we should not underrate what individuals can do. Wangari Maathai, again in Kenya, remains the example of what one individual can do. Probably would not have had Karura Forest, it would have been tall buildings by now. Or another park within the town called the Uhuru Park, Independence Park, would probably not have been there. There would have been a big, tall building that she managed to stop, which was 60-story, which was going to be built there. So what we are saying, all the participants, please use this time to exchange that. But when we all go back, let's go beyond the commitments, let's go beyond the conferences, and really start implementing. With those remarks, I would like to now declare the global land and forestry, the Global Land Restoration Forum, the Conference of Nairobi 2018, officially open, and wish you successful deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellency. We're very excited that Kenya has wonderfully opened this session. And I really just want to thank everybody for listening in and for the commitments, and that's listening to the presenters. I think we can hear and we understand. And just a few minutes ago, I heard a baby actually making a sound somewhere here. It's fantastic. I think the youngest participant we have here, which is really great. Bring them on. I think we need to bring our children to these events so that they can challenge us, because really we are restoring this planet for them and for the future generations beyond that. At this instance, I would like to invite Dr. Robert Nassi, who's going to give the scientific keynote, and he's the Director General of C4. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Jambo, Mbote, Mbolo, Initie, and so on. I'm going to give you a keynote. For that, I need to put that on the screen. It should appear miraculously. Okay. I'm going to give you a sort of a personal take on forest landscape restoration. So it's not necessarily C4 talking, or it's just me and my views about the topic. And like Eric, I will start by a little bit of time travel. Forest and landscape degradation is nothing really new. I mean, it's sort of, in 1936, the Anglo-French Forestry Commission was tasked of providing evidence of savannization of the forest in West Africa. In 1947, André Aubréville forecast the death of African forest in the first volume of Una Silva. In 1949, the same Aubréville wrote a 300-page book on climat and desertification in Afrique tropicale. When I arrived in Africa the first time in 1982 in Cameroon, there was the very day President Aidjo gave the power to President Biya. And there was no mention on forest restoration. There was no mention on forest certification. Climate change was not an issue. The issue was about economic development and how can we use natural resources for economic development, timber, land. There was no Chinese influence. There was the France-Afrique at its height, Civil society, almost unknown. Multipartism, very rare. And democratic free election, not very common. And there was 480 million people in Africa. You fast forward 35 years, and here we are with the huge restoration pledge of the IFR 100. This is a snapshot of the website a couple of days ago. The recognition of the importance of African forests and savanna to fight climate change, to protect biodiversity and environment. The increasing importance of China and India as major trading partners, displacing the old colonial power. Huge improvement in democracy, free election, civil society, and there are 1.3 billion Africans. And for the next 20 years, another billion coming. So like me, this morning you had the chance to hear from the story of the voice of the landscape. Here I will try to offer a complementary, personal, and likely biased view about restoration. And I start by a bit of a contradiction with what we have been here. So the world and Africa are greener. So if you look at this paper, everything that you see in green is in fact an increase in tree cover in Africa during a period of time. Then you have the wonderful story of the Gao in Niger. So everywhere in the world, in fact, there is encroachment from savannas by trees. So it seems that we have more trees, but where and how? This is a very recent paper published in Nature that says that, in fact, tree cover has increased during the last 35 years. So we have more trees than we had before, but where and how? And then you see there is a greener in the Sahel, not that positive in the Zambesian region, and then the story that Eric was saying about China. So the main greening outside of the Sahel that is linked of restoration activity is in Northern Europe and in China, where unfortunately degradation seems to prevail around the Amazon and in the Zambesian domain. So we still have more tree. So are we out of the wood, or do we still need restoration? We do, and probably more than ever. We still have 12 million hectares of land that are lost each year to degradation, harming the well-being of about 3 billion people, and that costs more than 10% of the annual global GDP in lost ecosystem services. And here we are talking about trillions of dollars. So I guess we are a bit like the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland. The Red Queen has to run all the time to stay at the same place. So if we restore 12 million hectares per year, we stay at the same place. So if we want to run and move, we have to run twice as fast as the Red Queen. And land degradation is a pervasive systemic phenomenon. It occurs everywhere. And for those of you that have read that, I suggest that you read the IPBES report that was published in 2018. That is the latest summary on forest land degradation. And the message from the IPBES report, besides the one on land degradation is a pervasive phenomenon, is that there is an urgent and concerted action needed. Otherwise, land degradation will worsen, and the problem is that it will become more and more costly. The cost of inaction is huge, and we need to do something about it. Why is there degradation? Because you have some drivers of degradation, and here is a snapshot of the IPBES report, and you see the driver of degradation for Africa. And in fact, the main driver seems to be rapid expansion and unsustainable management of cropland and grazing land, I quote the quote, causing significant loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services, food security, water purification. This has reached critical level in many parts of the world. So we need to address the drivers of degradation. Because if we don't address its driver, we can restore as much as we want, the land will be degraded again. So restore, yes, but where, how, and for whom? This is a map that was produced by WRI about the potential of restoration in Africa. and everything that you see in green has some potential for restoration. And Africa offers the greatest potential for forest landscape restoration. But we also need to be very careful, because any place that is without trees is not necessarily a degraded place, and that we have to remember that I think originally in the IFR 100, 40% of the land that was supposed to be restored was rangeland, so it's not necessarily only forest. So we need also to think about what we saw this morning. Restoration is about more than just the trees. Restoration is a question of landscape, as in a question of community rights. So we need to think about where to restore, why to restore, and for whom to restore. And unless we have the proper answer to this question, we are unlikely to be successful. And I hope that we will have some of these answers during the Landscape Forum. Now, I'm supposed to give you a science speech, so I will put a bit of science. And I have to say that in terms of the science of landscape restoration, I think most have been said or written already. I don't know if Robin Chasdon is in the room. Robin, you are here? I know. Yes, she's over there. So if you have a question about the science of restoration, you ask Robin, Minnesota. But fundamentally, one thing is important. It's understand what we mean by degradation and why we restore. And this is important because we don't have enough resources. So we have to apply some triage. So we have to be sure where you want to restore and where you want to restore. And you have this study that was prepared by Bajia Borigazul. And so this is what he calls the forest domain, but it could be the savanna domain also. And then you have different stages. And this stage, they appear more or less degraded. But fundamentally, if you let this forest by itself, it will go back to its natural state. So this whole issue of sylvigenesis, this whole issue of cycles. So where is it restoration? There is restoration when, in fact, you have something that is a stage of arrested development. In fact, when the succession is arrested, and when you need to intervene, then there is degradation. And then you intervene in restoring the forest. There is no need to intervene in a natural cycle. So there is not necessarily a need to intervene on a sustainable shifting cultivation landscape. So how do we decide where to intervene and how we define degradation and deforestation and restoration is important. And then the next question is, when you invest a significant amount of money in terms of restoration, how do you measure success? And success is not something which is absolute. It depends on the purpose of the restoration, and it depends on the chosen baseline. So if you look at the published literature, the Society of Ecological Restoration produced an excellent primer on restoration. But mostly what you read is about the return to an ideal pre-degradation ecosystem. So we want to restore the rainforest, or we want to restore the peatlands. Unfortunately, in most cases, this is not possible. We have reached a stage where you can probably improve the situation, but not necessarily restore the initial condition. Hence, the importance of keeping the initial condition where they are. So, if I take this example, and it's not from Africa, I apologize. This is a degraded peatland in Indonesia, in the Riau province. What you see is water, marsh, something that is burning every year, generating huge amount of greenhouse gases. And if you protect this from fire, that's what you get in 29 years. So this is, people will not disagree, some success in terms of generation, or in terms of restoration. But you can also have that, an oil palm plantation. And I'm willing to challenge or to be topical, but I think that this oil palm plantation is probably better than the idle land, which is degraded, which doesn't mean that we should cut the forest to plant oil palm, but mean that we need to keep as much as we can of the forests that are still intact, and we need to make as much as possible in terms of production in terms of economics, in terms of ecology for the forests that have been degraded. And now the next question is the money. Who should and how to finance restoration? And here you have some picture that and figure that were produced by WRI. There is about a shortfall of $300 billion per year in terms of funding for conservation and restoration. Sounds like a huge amount. Well, let us remind ourselves that the world managed to find every year $1,200 billion to produce weapons. So if we put our priority right, I think we should be able to find a few hundred billions to something that is probably our last chance of not going to a 3-degree world in 2050. So how do you make restoration an economic activity? And here you have big numbers. We lose 6.3 trillion per year to land degradation. And trillion is a number that has been mind-boggling for me. Anything that is more than 80, I cannot understand. But that's a huge amount. And then you read, otherwise, in other papers, and these are all from scientific papers, there is a net benefit from, let's say, 0.7 to 9 trillion simply by achieving the Bond Challenge. If you invest $1 in restoration, you are promised a $7 to $30 economic benefit for return. Do you know any financial investment, bonds, that brings you this return? And if we have huge costs to society, impressive returns, why is it that you don't have all the investors of the world knocking at the door over there trying to invest in restoration? Why are we not doing it? And we are not doing it because we need a paradigm change. We need to shift from the prevalent paradigm that says that restoration is very expensive. There is no financial return for the landowner. This is only for environmental benefits. These benefits are seen out of the market. These are market externalities. You rely on public funding, and this is a top-down mechanism. The new paradigm that we need to embrace, and all the people in the room, I hope, will be convinced, is that first, research and development and proper planning can considerably lower the cost of restoration. That restoration can provide increased incomes in terms of goods and jobs. It is an industry that will create job opportunities. And the resulting natural capital that you have restored provides goods and service to society that could be partially internalized and marketed. And we need blended finance and active participation of the private sector. There is not enough public money to do what we need to do, and we need to have a bottom-up approach. People matters in restoration. Thank you.
I think we need another round of applause, considering he talked about weapons. It is true. The world has committed lots of resources to actually secure weaponry, and we're not committing the equivalent of that amount to really restore these ecosystems that matter so much for our very existence. So I'll make a move from here. That's our Earth. That's our planet. Just keep it moving. That's where we live. Okay. Just let it go so that we're reminded of the planet we live on. Just keep it going. Thank you. Just keep it going. Fantastic. Okay, I just want to thank you so very much. Thank you everyone for listening, for being here, for being connected, and for being a part of this planet. Sorry, Satya. For being connected. And at this juncture, I really want to thank you so much. And you have 15 minutes ahead of our tea break and networking period. Please enjoy, and there will be some amazing sessions after that. Enjoy the complex and have fun and network. We're all connected. Thank you.